Okay. Hey guys, it's James. I wanted to give you all a quick rundown of the project since I wasn't able to get this to you in time for you to do it on your own before week one. I'm gonna hopefully not spend more than 5 minutes or so on each week. There's really not that much for the kids to do, but I just kind of want to walk you through what they're going to be doing and then some places they might get stuck. So before I show off the project as a whole, I'm going to just walk through my completed version. This is the version that I made in the videos, so this will match what you guys see in the videos. I do want to show you what the kids are going to start out with. This is what their project will look like on day one. Most of this stuff it's going to be just pretty much empty, but there are some game objects here that are important. Obviously, tech ability reference always needs to be there. The tile holder object, it's empty, but this is required for when they generate their tiles. This manager object just holds the deck manager component at the start, but they add to this as they go. Regular stuff, Unity default. There are some UI elements that I have already set up for them as well. That's just listed here. They shouldn't mess with really any of this. They'll add to this, but what's here, they're not going to be really touching all that much. So yeah, just some stuff set up front for them. Once they get into week one, what they're going to be doing is setting up their board. Pretty much all week one is placing these transforms that you can see here with these giant yellow gizmos. These are going to be, they're instructed to set up these gizmos using the little icon thing here in the inspector. Each of these transforms are divided into branches. The kids have to have at least 5 of these branches under their tile spaces game object. So they have to have them labeled as well. The tech ability button's checking for the name. So yeah, they need to have minimum of 5 branches. These branches just allow them to, be able to break the board up into pieces, makes it a little easier to lay it out, as well as, you can duplicate sections and just make it lay out a little bit easier. When they build these branches, they're going to be placing them into this tile spawner component that they'll add to the game manager game object. They're placing it into this array of branches and then filling out these tile prefabs with the prefabs located in the tiles prefab folder. Additionally, what they'll be doing as well is in this tile spawner script. Oops, I got my tech ability set up here. Well, let's see, can I just do this? There we go. So they're going to be filling out these instantiation calls. The rest of this they're not going to mess with, but they're going to, fill out these ifs and else ifs with the instantiations and adding to these list of tiles. And then in the following step, they'll be setting rotations and positions on those tiles. So not a whole lot of scripting for them for this first week. And their final step for the week will be actually setting up the board decorations. So they're going to set up the board transforms first, and then they're going to dress the world around those transforms because, that's a much easier workflow. I give them some tips in the videos about how to move multiple objects and duplicate things and stuff. So they get a lot from me, but it's probably going to be something that you'll want to talk to them about as well. As far as bonus steps go, I show them how to make some custom lighting. I believe they need to have a minimum of 3 lights, and we can check that in the techability.cs script. Again, if you guys ever have kids getting stuck, you can just find this script in there, or you'll have the project as well, of course. So in the core systems folder under y/tech_techability, this techability script, down at the bottom, there's this region that says weak information. That's going to be where all of the information on what the check setup button's looking for is. And I believe, it's looking for a minimum of 4 lights in the scene. So that includes the directional lights. So, I've got, I think 5 here. So, they're encouraged to place as many as they want. Of course, Unity imposes limits on that by default, so they can't go crazy with it. The other thing they're doing for bonuses in this week is going to be adding a particle effect to their tiles. If I open, wrong tile. Well, actually, so there's a rings prefab here. This is what holds the particle system that plays the effect. They're basically just going to add that to each of the tile prefabs, and you can see if I click it, it's got like a cool little spinning effect. And that plays when they press the play button and they spawn on their tiles. It's got a little spawn effect on them. For week 2, they're basically setting up their player prefabs and setting up the player select canvas. So, when I press play, there's these buttons here. They're writing the script that these buttons are referencing, as well as making the buttons themselves. That script is this very simple player select script, and you can see their buttons have 3 events in the on-click event here. They're calling the player select method or select players method in the player select script that goes on the player select canvas, and then they're enabling the roll dice and end turn buttons. They're enabling those game objects as well on these buttons. I'll go ahead and open up that player select script. It's super simple, just a few lines. Basically, it's just spawning those player prefabs and then telling the game manager to assign their players to their respective positions in the the queue of players. This is turn-based, so they have to have defined positions in that queue. Let's see what else. The game manager component. Oh yeah, and this was in week 2. They also just add the game manager here. Nothing crazy there. They do in the bonus steps actually add some code to the game manager. So by default, the only variables or public variables they have access to are these current players, active player, and player iterator. They don't actually do anything with these, but I just wanted them to be public so they could see that while I play. But if they do the bonus steps, they actually have some pretty complicated bonus steps. The first one being an animation that's controlled by this dice animation coroutine. Basically what it's going to do is it has an array of sprites of little die and 2 die images. It basically swaps out those, or the sprite that the image is rendering based on a random iterator or a random place inside that die sprites array. So it picks a random sprite out of the array, swaps it into the images sprite component, and then it does that for 3 seconds, and then after 3 seconds it just sets the sprite to the equivalent sprite, the equivalent die sprite that would represent their die roll. So you see they pass in die 1 and die 2. Those are the values that they get in roll dice. That is just a random dot range. That's the actual act of rolling the dice, right? It's getting that random number. So you pass that into the coroutine, and then the coroutine processes that. It does the random animation and then sets our dice to show the 2 faces of the die that came up from the roll. They also have the second step in the bonus is just a dice roll audio source or audio clip that they play. The audio source they put onto their main camera. It's not on there by default. They add that, and then they get the component from that camera.main object, and then they basically just set its clip to the dice roll clip, tell it to play. They do have to assign the dice roll clip in the inspector. In week 3, they do some stuff in their player script. This is going to be where they have the optional, more difficult steps. Those more difficult versions aren't available yet, but this is week 3, obviously, so it's not going to be, all that big of a deal not having it ready yet, but I will have that for you guys going into week 3. Basically, their first step is just going to be filling out this 2-line method. Second step, where this is going to be the optional part, is this move between tiles coroutine. The default one, which is the easy version, is this here. It does not include these animation calls. These are going to be a later step, but this while loop, this transform.lookAt, and these yield returns are all part of the movement step, the easy one. And all it's doing is just moving the player transform between those list of tiles that the game manager passes. Let's see what else. Oh, they fill out their check tile method in this week as well. I don't remember. I guess I can check very quickly. I don't think that they make the whole switch statement, but I could be wrong. Let's see. Yeah, there's the switch statement there. So yeah, they have the switch statement here. They just fill out what's inside it. So they add the current effect, and in the instance of the winning space or the draw space, they tell the respective managers what to do. These clips and particle effects, these are bonus steps. The speed and slow clips are for week 3, and then the win ones are for week 4. Let's see what else. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, because these particle effect things these ones here, the speed and slow ones, those are the bonuses for week 3. Important to note about those is that they need to, on the prefabs for their characters, they have to, slot those sounds into those public variables. But then also on the prefabs, they add the actual effects themselves to the player prefab. And they have to center the position on those. They have some wonky position values by default, so they set the X and Z position to 0, and that puts it right on the player. But again, nothing too crazy complicated. Finally, in week 4, they make their cards. So this is probably the point I could see a lot of kids getting confused, because this is a little bit weird. They've never worked with scriptable objects before. But basically what's happening here is I wrote a scriptable object class. All it is it holds a couple strings. I think it's on this side. Yeah, it holds some strings for the title and description of the card. There's a sprite, which is in the sprites folder in resources, that represents each effect that the card can have. So there's a specific card type. They can either be self-targeted, they can target anyone in the game, or it will target everyone in the game. And basically the two effects that it can have is slow or speed. None is listed here because the player can have no effect on them, and that's where it's getting these values, but it doesn't work on the card. So the kids, if they pick none as an effect type, it's not going to work, and it might break. I haven't tried it, so I tell them in the videos explicitly, do not set it to none, but you know how the kids can be. They might try it. So, the important things to know is that these 3 are all safe, but for the effect types, it has to be slow or speed. They are picking their own custom titles and descriptions, but I do tell them to assign the sprite values to the corresponding effect types. So the green ones are all meant to go with the speed effect types. Red goes with slow. And then the ones where they're all colored in are the all effect. The ones with the 2 black figures, those are the targeted effects. And then the solo sticks are the self-targeted effects. Finally, they in their game manager, they open their deck manager up and they write this draw card script. Again, a very short script that just, it enables the selected card game object, and then calls its fill card method, which is the next method they write in the following step, which you can see here. It's basically this current card equals selected card is there, but they fill in these 3 lines here. They're basically setting a text, a text object's text for both the title and description, and then they're swapping the card sprite out, and that card is here. It's under the cards object. It's the selected card thing. It shows the card title, it plays the description text, and then it swaps out that sprite that they put on the card where that white box is. And then the last core step is them just adding the win game method to the game manager. So that's down here. It's these 4 lines. It's just doing some game object.finds and then sets the time scale to 0. I haven't actually talked at all about the actual game itself, so I guess I should do that. Basically, all the game is it's a local multiplayer game where players can roll dice, and their objective is to get to the final 3 spaces of the board without going over. So, I have my thing here. Actually, I should explain this too. So on the tile spawner component, there's these tile spawn chances. The higher the number here, the more likely it is to spawn. So I was testing the draw tile, so I set draw chance to 100. Realistically, it should be something like 3-1 and, maybe like 2-2 or something, right? Maybe 4 here, I don't know. They can set these values to whatever they want. I'm not checking for specific values there, and they're informed of that. But so that the board randomly generates along those transforms they place. Their goal is to hit the roll dice button and get to the final 3 spaces on the board and land in these 3 spaces without going over. So if they go over, they assign on the tile spawner a reset tile, and we can see that if we double click it, they assign what tile that is. So I picked it to be this one. If I turn the gizmos back on, I tell them to change the color of that little gizmo thing to green so that they can tell which one is which. And yeah, they need to go land on those 3 tiles without going over. If they do go over, they're reset back to this tile. And then those cards that we were talking about, they draw those as they land on the draw card spaces. What's cool about the draw cards is that they can either use them immediately or store them, and they can store up to 6. So if they want to, say, for example, they draw a slow self card and they want to save that for when they're approaching the final spaces, they hit the save button or the store card button, and then they can use that on themselves as they get to the end. So yeah, I think that's kind of the general rundown. Again, this project is, relatively easy. We're going to keep all the Gear 1 projects about this difficulty level. So expect the next project to be of similar difficulty for the kids, though I'm probably going to make it significantly easier on myself because a number of these systems on my end were pretty insane, like this card manager script. This is obviously not the best way to go about this, but this was a headache and a half to get set up to get those cards able to be stored and track which player had what and all this stuff. There's a lot of systems that the kids don't touch for that reason because they were just kind of a headache. So yeah, I know that was insanely quick, but I wanted to get through that as fast as possible so you guys didn't feel like you're watching a million-year-long video. So if you guys have any questions, of course, about this stuff, feel free to ask me. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Of course, I would encourage you, between now and week 2 or 3, maybe, go through the project. It's very easy, so it shouldn't take you very long, and just get a feel for what's going on because... it's cool. We're trying out this whole local multiplayer thing, and I think it's something that we're going to see in more of the projects in the future. So, yeah. So thanks everybody. Sorry about it being late again, but that won't be an issue going forward. We're starting, the second part of this gear almost immediately, so that'll be done well in advance before October comes around. So again, thanks everybody. Hope this is helpful, and good luck.